Well, basically, when my father was in his late teens, he applied to join the police force, and when he passed all his exams, he got accepted. There was a post up in Shrewsbury in Shropshire, and he was in the police force for about 2-3 years when war broke out. And once again, he thought, well, he was warned that at some time or other, around about 1941-42, that there was big plans were afoot to take back Europe and drive the Germans back. And at some time or other, they were going to, as I say, come up with this big plan to do it. And so he volunteered his services for the Navy as an RNVR again, rather than risk being called up to serve in the army. And because of his knowledge of the sea, he did his training up in Scotland, a place called Lochailot, I think it was, and he had accelerated promotion to the rank of lieutenant just in time for D-Day. But about 2 weeks before D-Day, there was a big exercise. It was only supposed to be an exercise out at Slapton Sands in Devon, and I think it was called Exercise Tiger. What they had to do was, there was quite a few Americans there. There was about 1,000 American troops plus the British troops, and they were going to do in their landing barges, they would load up with all the ammunition and explosives and stuff, and they went about 5 miles offshore, and they stayed there. They were supposed to stay there until daylight and then do a mock landing up on the beach. Around about midnight, there was a German E-boat was patrolling the channel, and he must have spotted these landing barges, and of course the American landing barges were that much taller than the British ones, and they stood up against the skyline, and they knew exactly what they were, and of course they started firing. And my father, he was in charge of about 400 men at the time, and he issued an order straight away: scatter and don't return fire. But the Americans, they started firing back. And of course, once the Germans saw where the return fire was coming from, they pinpointed it with accuracy, and they lobbed a load of mortar shells. And within a matter of minutes, there was almost 1,000 American casualties. And anyhow, that was a thing that was covered up for years and years after the war. And of course, the following day, the American High Command, they were absolutely bricking it, because they thought, oh God, because they lost a lot of officers in that as well. And they were carrying important papers regarding D-Day. And of course they very quickly went out and they gathered as many bodies as they could, and hoping that the Germans didn't pick up any of the bodies, which they didn't by all accounts. And for 2 pins they were going to call off D-Day, but they went ahead with it. And Father was attached to the American forces at Omaha Beach, and there were several sections, because it was such a big beach, because there was Utah and Omaha were the American section, and then there was Gold, Sword and Juneau, they were the British and Commonwealth section, which all along the Normandy beach line. All I know was that Father said that when daylight appeared, when they were hitting the beaches, because it was his job, he was on landing barges and they had to follow the troops in. regardless. There was no waiting. They had to follow the troops in, and they had to offload all the supplies as they were hoping that they were going to go straight up. But as you know, Omaha Beach, they were tied down for I think it was 24 hours almost. And the first wave of casualties on that beach, which Father was, there was 98% severe casualties, and it was literally a slaughter. And but Father and his men, they managed to do what they could, and eventually they did the breakthrough. The Americans, they broke through and pushed the Germans back, and of course once all the his job was done there, they had a bit of downtime, and he went for a stroll along the beach, and that's when he found this American Stars and Stripes flag, which was washing in. So he was a bit of a hoarder, he was, in his day, and so he took it with him, and he kept it with him all his life. And every anniversary of D-Day, he would always hang it up on the washing line, along with the Union Jack and that ensign. And I've carried that tradition on since he's passed away. After he'd done his bit at Normandy, he had fresh orders to make his way around the coast to Le Havre. I can't think how far it was around the coast, but because he was an officer, he was told to go by road, and he refused. He said, "No, I'm going with the men. I've been with the men all through with this, and I want to go with them now." And he was warned, he said, because the waters between the Normandy beachhead and Le Havre is what they call unswept, which has got there's mines all over the place. Normally that's what the minesweepers do. They target all these, but they hadn't been cleared at all, so he had to navigate him and all the other landing barges under his command. And here he got them round, and his men thought the world of that. And when they got round there, then they did what they had to do, and then several of his men approached him and said, "Do you think we can go ashore?" And because he said, we know where there's a German warehouse that carries all their supplies and stuff. And he said, "Well, you can go," he said, "but I don't know nothing about it." So they went. They were like heathens, they were, and they returned with officers' coats and whiskey and all sorts. They literally raided it clean, literally. So anyhow, then he was issued with his final order. Well, that was to they said, if you want to stay in the Navy, of course you'll be transferred down south, which that'd be the Japanese War. And he said, "No, thank you." He said, "I've done my bit, and all I want to do is go home to my family."